And part 4. Here we go. Assault rifle, best in slot. Yay. Right, this one's going to be slightly off topic, simply just because we're talking about best in slot, and I'm going to go over some builds here that just categorically are not best in slot. And I'm doing this for a specific purpose. See, a lot of people are being like, oh, I'd rather use this, I'd rather use this, I'd rather use XYZ, which is fine, absolutely 100% play your way. Said from the start, these are going to be just sort of like used as skeletons. Just because they're mathematically best in slot doesn't mean that 1, you'll even get along with the build, 2, you'll even like the build, 3, pretty much all of them are perfect glass cannon or focus. Yes, you can change talents depending on what it is you're wanting, but when we're talking about best in slot, we're talking of like a difference of 10%. So in this video, I'm going to be going over some standard high-end spotter builds. Spotter, as well as obliterate, are technically not best in slot. They miss out on like 10% DPS, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot. Even with spotter or obliterate builds, you're still perfectly capable of doing solo heroic, group heroic. You can even do legendary missions, raids. There's nothing wrong with them. But there's the difference of what is technically best in slot and what people like to run. Just because something is best in slot does not mean you have to run it. The build I'm running here is a bit of a weird joke build. I've done a video on it before. I've called it the Heart Defender. I'm using the Defender drone with Heartbreaker on skill tier 2 with a skill tier 4 shield with 2 blues. I very rarely even use blues, but yeah, I've got 2 yellow, 2 blue and 4 red, and I'm just running around with a Heartbreaker build just like an idiot, basically being immortal because I can. It's fun. Not even close to being best in slot though, but I play it because it's a game. Right, to highlight this, perfect glass cannon is a 1.3 amp, 30%. Spotter times flatline is 1.15 times 1.15 equals 1.3225. This is a 32.25% increase. So we've used up 2 talent slots. We have a total of 3 essentially. We've used up 2 talent slots to make up just 2.25% more of what perfect glass cannon would give. Just off of this alone. Because now if we just put flatline onto perfect glass cannon, which is 1.3 times 1.15, we get 1.495, which is 49.5%. So just following this trail of thought, spotter builds are not going to be as powerful as things like glass cannon. And yes, we do have things like perfect spotter and perfect flatline, which is 1.2 times 1.2. This gives us 1.44, which is a 44% increase. Normal flatline and perfect glass cannon is still 49.5. So yeah, we can follow this. Again, yeah, we could do perfect glass cannon with perfect flatline, 1.3 times 1.2, which is 1.56, 56% increase. But then we have to factor in just how inaccurate Kingbreaker is and how much uptime you're going to have with actually shooting things doing actual DPS. So just off of this alone, with this little quick exercise that hopefully we've just done together, you should see that although spotter builds won't be best in slot simply just because they barely make up just glass cannon or perfect glass cannon really by itself. So yeah, spotter builds are not going to be best in slot. However, what they do actually offer you is still pretty high DPS with 0 drawback. So for the extra that you would get with perfect glass cannon, an extra 10% in DPS, you do take multiplicative 60% more damage, which some people can deal with, some people can't. So caveat to this is, great, you do 10% more damage, but I don't take as much damage to you. Now, personally for me, I feel like we die in 2 or 3 bullets anyway, so what's the harm in making it just 2 bullets? Because that's essentially what it comes down to, or just utilize your cover a bit more. It is a cover-to-cover looter shooter after all. So, for me, personally, the way I feel is there's no harm in using things like Perfect Glass Cannon, because if you're going to die, not using Perfect Glass Cannon is not going to save you from the kissing the ground interaction. Right, so the first build is Seska, Grupo, Contractors, Foxes, and then a unicorn named Uzina piece closer for Perfect Spotter. Police M4 is going to be our best bet, or we can swap the named Uzina chest piece if you can't be bothered farming a unicorn for Fenris with Spotter. These are basically identical. Now, I'm going to go over the DPS in a minute. However, before we do that, these are essentially the same build. One uses Fenris, one uses Closer, however you want to pronounce it. In terms of damage, they are identical. In fact, the Fenris one actually does win. The only reason why they're going to look identical on the DPS sheet, that is going to go up in a minute, is simply just because of rounding. The way in which we round things up or down in reality is very different as to how the game actually does it. It does turn out that Fenris with Spotter will actually net you between 0.5% and 1% more, depending on how many times you crit in your magazine, than the named chest piece. A weird caveat to this is, if you are using the named Uzina chest piece, you really should be running a Fenris piece in your build anyway, just because otherwise you end up lacking on one side of your damage, which hurts your DPS more. So here we have the DPS calculations. At the top is our Perfect Glass Cannon, then we have the one using Closer, and then we have the one using a Spotter Fenris chest. As you can see, they're about 10% below Perfect Glass Cannon, like I said, but the 2 builds are near enough identical, but you do take a 10% drop, and as such, as I explained at the start of this series, because it's an over a 5% drop at maximum output, I will not be saying it is best in slot. Shouldn't really, on my own rules, even be talking about this. However, a lot of people are saying weird and wacky stuff that is just, in terms of math, is factually not true. So this is my attempt to clear it up. Are they good builds? Yes. Are they best in slot? No. Now, if you are wanting to mess around with it a bit more, this is like an example of what you could do. If you do plan on using a Fenris piece in your build, you would want a unicorn Uzina, simply just because Perfect Spotter and you have Fenris. However, in this scenario, that previous build is, even in this regard of best in slot, that is suboptimal, simply just because you're able to get more out of Coyote's Mask. So what you would do is replace the Grupo piece with Fenris and then put Coyote's Mask on instead. This will offer you a better damage ratio. Yeah. Bit weird, I'm aware. And what this then gives us is a 1% damage increase. The top build being without Coyote's Mask, and the bottom one being with Closer, a Fenris piece, and Coyote's Mask. Contractors, Foxes, obviously. Now, typically, Closer is kind of a weird catch, simply just because 10% AR and then 15% amp is the exact same as 20% amp. What actually hurts Closer, despite the fact that it's a higher multiplier, bigger number, we all like the bigger number, but what hurts it is the brand set bonus, that 5% armor. That is, in the grand scheme of things, in best in slot, that is redundant. It does nothing, it's not helping you, which is why if you are just going to use Closer, we need to get a Fenris piece on there, or a way in which you can bolster up your crit or other multipliers more efficiently. The only reason I'm saying Fenris specifically is because it is the easiest piece to do in this regard. We could go with, if you're more accurate, getting Habsburg or Providence in there for more headshot. That would work better with Spotter than Fenris as well, but only on headshots. Fenris is just kind of the cheapest, easiest and most effective in this manner to utilize. Anyway, I'm hoping this kind of clears up that yes, I'm going for best in slot, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's absolutely perfect for you. Improvise, adapt and overcome. Find what you like about a build, find what you don't like, experiment, change things around. Just because I'm doing these videos and showing mathematical best in slot doesn't mean that everyone has to run these things. Although one thing I would like to point out from the off, I see so many people being like, oh, but meta and best in slot is boring, there's not many builds. Really, I've gone for about 50 builds I think so far. Yeah, there's plenty. I've not even touched on tank, healers and skill builds yet. There's plenty. Absolutely plenty. Anyway, have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.